Hello everyone. I'm going to give an introduction to hosting and DevOps. Firstly, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Nowen Kottage, a third year software engineer undergraduate of SLIIT. Moving on, let's talk about the contents for today. So I'm going to speak on what is hosting and give a demonstration on hosting, and also what is DevOps and cloud computing as well. Moving on, what is hosting? So I hope you guys have visited websites and have done basic, have created basic websites and web applications in your previous projects, at least locally. So let's have a look on what is in the slide. Web hosting is an online service that makes your website's content accessible on the internet. When you purchase a hosting plan, you are renting space on a physical server to store all the website's files and data. So basically, hosting refers to the process of storing, serving, and making web content accessible over the internet. So as you can see, there is in the picture, you are having your web application or website run in your local machine and hosted via a hosting provider to the internet, which can be accessed by other device via the internet. So, so that basically about hosting. There are different types of hosting. So I'm going to talk about two types of hosting. One is shared hosting and cloud hosting. In shared hosting, different clients are sharing the same server provided by the hosting provider. But in cloud hosting, like you're having a web application or web service hosted in a cloud service cloud provider. We'll be talking that in the latter part. Now, I would like to give a small demonstration on hosting. And in here, although for the backend is mentioned as render.com, a front-end Netlify doesn't have to be as such. You can have both of them in the same hosting provider as well. But I'm normally like we follow this way. So that's the way I am following this pattern. So this is the basic MERN app that I'm going to host today. So firstly, I'm going to host the backend part. So this is the dashboard that you would get in render.com once you sign up. So then I'm clicking on new, clicking on web service. If you are connected to your GitHub or GitLab, your repositories would be shown here. So I am going to select this dummy MERN app repository. You can give us any example service name here. So I'm going to give here ITP guide 6. I'm going to keep this as default. I'm going to select my main branch and root directly. It would be backend. So the backend. For the runtime, it would be Node. And for the backend, for the build command, I'm going to give npm as I'm using npm, not yarn. npm install in order to install all the dependencies. And for start command, I'm going to give the same npm start. I'm going to use the free instance type, and I'm going to click on create web service. Until the deployment for the backend occurs, let me move on to the front end part. So this is the Netlify dashboard that you would get once you sign up or sign in. So I'll be deploying the front end part where Netlify. I'll be clicking on sites, clicking on add new site. You can import an existing project either from GitHub or deploy it manually. I'm going to go for manual deployment. And for the manual deployment, you will have to go to your directory and give the npm run build command. So once you give the npm run build command, a folder like such here build would be created. So I already have folder, so I will be canceling that. And I'll be copying the build folder and pasting it here. So until this is uploaded, I'll be having a poll on hosting. Please answer for that. So here you can see the front end part is already been deployed. Here it's been deployed. For the data on the backend to be appeared, it would take some time to load. So the backend part is still loading as we are running out of time. Let me show you an example one, which I did earlier. And also please answer the poll meantime. So I'll be just showing a JSON response in order to show that the backend is just to show the backend is working. So here, this is the JSON response that you would get. Let's see if our previous deployment is deployed. Yeah, it's deployed. ITP 6 is deployed. It's changing here the URL. Same JSON response. So our backend deployment is successful. For the front-end deployment, it will take some time to load the data. So until then, let's move on for the next content in our presentation. So next, I'm going to give an introduction to DevOps and cloud computing. So I think it would be better if you can take 2 seconds to read this. So just have a look on this. Hoping that you guys read this. So let me move on. So DevOps, the phrase itself gives it definition. Dev is for development and Ops is for operation. So DevOps is a methodology in the software development and IT industry used as a set of practices and tools. So DevOps integrates and automates the work of software development and IT operations. So the primary goal of DevOps is to enable organizations to deliver software products and services more efficiently, frequently, and with higher quality. It emphasizes automation, continuous integration, continuous delivery, and a culture of shared responsibility among developers, operational professionals, and other stakeholders involved in the software development life cycle. So you can see there is an example in this image. This is a DevOps cycle. So you can see starting from planning, code, build, test, release, deploy, operate, monitor, and repeating cycle again. There are some exemplary tools which are being used in each of the stage. For the testing, this JUnit is being used, release Jenkins, and operate Kubernetes. So you can use this tool. So moving on to the next in the same content, cloud computing. So in cloud service providers, they provide you a lot of services compared to like hosting providers. But as you're talking about hosting, if you think that web hosting is something similar to cloud hosting, but in cloud hosting, unlike web hosting, it gives you a single server for your hosting and it's much more scalable compared to web hosting. So now let's move on. Check if our previous deployment this shows the data from the backend. No, it takes some time to show the data. Let me show you one of my previous builds. It's taking some time to load. Thereby, let me move on for the poll. So in the poll, 65% have chosen Netlify is correct. 10% have chosen BAT, it's wrong, that's not hosting provider. 20% have chosen Vercel, that's also a correct hosting provider. And Sean is not a hosting provider. So that's for the poll. Let's move on to next in our content. So next is benefits of DevOps. So DevOps has a lot of benefits and DevOps is mainly focused on automation. So the first benefit, there are 6 benefits here. Starting with the first benefit, faster, better product delivery. DevOps enable organizations to deliver software products and updates more rapidly. So by automating processes such as build, testing, and deployment. Next advantage would be security. So in security, integrating security processes such as security practices into DevOps workflow through DevSecOps helps identify and address security vulnerabilities early in the development cycle. So by automating security checks, code analysis, and incorporating security controls throughout the software delivery pipeline. So the next advantage, as we talked now in the previous security and faster product delivery, like we talked about this automation part, and DevOps also focusing cloud computing as well. So you can see some cloud service providers in the to the right side of the image. So in the third benefit, like it generally gives an idea as you are using cloud computing, what is the means by creating scalability and availability. So DevOps facilitates scalability and availability by leveraging infrastructure as code, automation, and cloud technologies. So more stable environments. I talked about automation earlier as well. So with DevOps practices, organizations can create more stable and reliable production environments by adapting to techniques like automated test, infrastructure validation, and monitoring. Issues and defects can be identified, resolved early, reducing system failures and downtime. So before the last, the better resource utilization. DevOps emphasizes efficient resource utilization through automation and optimization. So as along in our previous 5 advantages, we talked about greater automation. So we talked about automation. The last advantage is about greater automation. So DevOps encourages the automation of repetitive tasks such as testing, deployment, and monitoring. So that's all about the benefits of DevOps. Let's move on for the next content. So next, I'm going to give a brief introduction onto microservices. For this also, I will give about 2 seconds for you to have a look on this description. So hoping that you guys have had a look. So basically, microservices involves in breaking down the software application into small, loosely coupled, and independently deployable services. You can see in the above first image, there's a cube which is broken down into 5 small cubes. So that basically gives you a small idea onto microservices. In the below image, it's an example of microservices. So let's see. The microservices here is being applied for the backend part. And for the front end, the user is being sync via web or through the mobile. So it's having an API call request for the backend where the API gateway, which identifies to which service the calls comes to and routes to the particular service. So what is the advantage of having microservices? I think you might get an idea. So in here, the catalog is having a separate service, shopping cart a separate service, discount a separate service. Thereby, if one service goes down, it won't be affecting the other service. Moreover, moreover, another advantage would be like you can have another backup, like for example, catalog one, which another DB called catalog one. Thereby, the data in the catalog DB is replicated to catalog one DB as well. If catalog DB goes down, the catalog one would be up. Moreover, you can have these services connected as well, but in microservice, we mainly encourage in not to have them connected and to have them separated. But in some instances, you will need them to be connected to another service as well. Having API gateway is one of the best practices. It's not a must to have API gateway. You can either directly communicate to the each and every services here. Let's move on to the next. It's an introduction to Docker. So here also I would like to give you about 2 seconds to have a look. So I hope that you guys have had a look. So Docker is an open source platform that enables creation, deployment, and running of applications using containerization. So basically these containers are lightweight, isolated, and portable units, the package software and its dependencies, allowing applications to run consistently across different environments. So what is the process of containerization called? This Docker allows these applications to be packaged into containers. So containers encapsulate the application and its dependency, including the libraries, frameworks, and system tools. You can see here there's a whale navigating in the waters, like in top of the whale, there are some containers. So in order for this container to run an application, so what is inside this container? It's a Docker image. So what does the Docker image contain? So Docker image contains the startup command of application, the command to install a dependency, the package.json, and all the details related to your web application. Then, so if you have your details in the image, why do you need a container? So container provides a runtime environment for that image in order to run your application. And moreover, an advantage of Docker. So an advantage of Docker is that there will be no compatibility issues, as you can run your application in different environments. So I will have a demonstration on this as well. So let's move on to the next slide. So now I will be moving on to an introduction to Azure. Azure is an example of a cloud service provider. I would like if you could have about 2 seconds to like have a look on this description. So hoping that you guys have looked on this description, I will move on to the demonstration part. So firstly, let's start with the microservices part. So this is an example of microservices. So here all the services are being separated: feedback, order admin, payment, products, seller, user. They are not connected to each other. Now, as I talked about the gateway earlier, let me show you an example of the gateway. So here if the backend call is coming as user, the gateway would route it to this 8081 port. If it coming as product, gateway will route it to 8070. 8070, this is the product service. If you come as product, the gateway will route it to this product service. So that basically what the gateway is, why we need a gateway. And this is an example of a Docker image. So this contains all the details of application. Here the package, copying the package.json, npm install, expose into this port, and startup command. So that's the example of Docker file which needs to be built for an image. So an example of Docker images, once you install Docker into a local machine and run the command Docker images, so it would display all the images currently in your machine. So this is the name of my image and this is the name of my Docker Hub. So moving on for the Docker Hub, this is the dashboard you will get once you sign up or sign in for your Docker Hub. So Docker Hub is something similar to GitHub, but there is no code here. Only it contains the repositories of your Docker images only. So moving on to Azure, this is the dashboard you will receive once you sign up for Azure, and you can sign up using the student developer pack where you will get 100 Azure credits. So in here, I did guys 6 tests. So this is an resource example of a resource group. Basically, in order to give you a basic idea, this is like adding some files into an organized folder. Now I'll be going on to create a resource. You can create any resource you want. You can see there are several resources here, but I'll be only using the web app. So I'll be creating a web app. So here I'll be keeping this as default and I'll be selecting the ITP guide 6 test as my resource group. For the web app name, you can give any web app name you need. I'm going to give ITP guide 6. Let's see if it's available. Here's the green tick. I'm going to select on Docker container, keep the operating system environment as Linux, and I'm going to select on next by keeping these as default. In here, I'm going to select as the image source as Docker Hub, and I'm going to paste your image and the tag. So then here's there's no need of giving a startup command as my Docker image already contains the necessary commands in order to start my web application. And we're going to click here review and create. So until the deployment of this Azure application occurs, there's another poll on clouds on selecting some examples of cloud service provider. Please answer to that poll. And let me show you an example of what I had deployed earlier. I will be showing the deployment as well, but and as this is taking some time to load, let me show you one of my previous deployments. So this is one of my previous deployment. You can see this is a basic Create React app deployed in Azure. Talking more further on about the resource group, I'm going to select on ITP Guide 6 test. What I just now deployed, I think it would be taking some time. Deployment successful. So then it will take some time. Sorry, it will take some time, like to store it in here. ITP guys 6. Yeah, it will take some time. But here you can see my previous web application, which I already been deployed under this resource group. Here it now currently like display the my deployment what I had just did now. So now once I click that deployment, it's still loading. Just give me some time. So until this loads, let's move on to the Kubernetes part. So next content is going to be an intro to Kubernetes. I would like to give you about 2 seconds to have a look on this. So hoping that you guys had a look. Let me start. So what Kubernetes provides, as we talked about Docker earlier, I'll be linking this Kubernetes part to Docker as well. So Kubernetes provides a robust framework for running and coordinating multiple Docker containers across a cluster of servers. So what basically Kubernetes does? Kubernetes does basically orchestration of the container. So Kubernetes simplifies the management of containerized applications by automating various tasks related to deployment, scaling, and monitoring. So Kubernetes also distributes these containers across multiple nodes into the cluster, ensuring that your application remains available even if individual nodes or containers fail. So what is this node? So a node is a worker machine in Kubernetes and may be either a virtual or physical machine depending on the cluster. So what are these pods? Pods are simply the smallest unit of execution in Kubernetes consisting of one or more containers. Now let me move on to show you an example. So you can see that our deployment is successful. Now let's move on to the Kubernetes part. The Kubernetes part, you can install Kubernetes either using by Minikube or Windows Package Manager. So if you, anyways, you will have to give the command minikube start, start a Kubernetes, and I'll be using this command in order to get my pods. So these are my current pods: the card deployment, feedback deployment, order deployment, order admin deployment. So these are my current pods which I'm having. So let's move on. I think this might be loaded. It takes some time to load. There's something it takes some time to load. Thereby, I hope you got a general understanding of my session today on hosting and DevOps. So let me have a look at the poll. So about 48% has selected Azure, correct. 17% has selected Alibaba Cloud, correct. And Cloud is wrong, 3% has selected. AWS correct, 32%. So majority of you have selected the correct answer of some examples of cloud providers. Now that's all for session today. So if you have any question, please drop it in the chat or reach me out in Teams. So hope you guys understood of today's session. So thank you.